Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. From the world of DC Comics comes a story featuring one of the most popular superheroes of all time, a speedster who travels back in time to right a wrong and bring peace to his life, and in the process dooms the world to superhuman war and eventual Armageddon. We're talking about Flashpoint. Flashpoint is a limited series written by Geoff Johns and drawn by Andy Kubert and was published by DC Comics from May to August of 2011. The story focuses on the Flash, an iconic DC character with the power of super speed, as well as other top-tier DC characters. The hero known as the Flash originally debuted in Flash Comics in January 1940 and was later revived and redesigned in Showcase number 4 in October 1956. Flashpoint centers on Barry Allen, aka the Flash, the fastest man alive. Though Barry is a well-respected hero and a valuable member of the Justice League, he's haunted by the death of his mother, who was murdered when he was a child. Seeking to find peace and bring an end to his personal heartache, Barry decides to run backwards through time and save his mother's life. But when he wakes up, not only does he have no memory of this, the entire world as he's known it has changed. Barry is no longer the Flash, and longtime heroes like Batman are much different than before. Wonder Woman and Aquaman are at war, and Superman is nowhere to be found. Though the world is on the brink of destruction, Barry must somehow find a way to restore the timeline and bring an end to the nightmare he inadvertently created. Flashpoint was well received by critics and fans alike, eventually being adapted as an animated film called Flashpoint Paradox. It was also adapted for the Flash television series and is integral to the plot of the Flash film set to release in 2023. Thanks to the imaginative storytelling, the art, and the characters, Flashpoint remains one of the most popular comic book series of all time. And that's the lowdown on Flashpoint. We cover a lot of Marvel here on the show. I think anyone who's ever listened to the 6M podcast can testify to that one. It's true. It's one of the M's. It's one of the things that we do here. Marvel makes us happy. We're in the bag for it. I've said this many times. If this is the first time you've heard it, that means you've never listened to any episodes prior. You're doing life wrong. Go binge the archives. I promise you, there's some great episodes in the back catalog. And I don't say that for my benefit. I say it because I have some awesome co-hosts who know their stuff and who are passionate about the things we talk about. Today is going to be no exception. All right. But this time out, as you can see by the subject, we're not talking about Marvel this time, kids. Nope. No, sir. This time we're talking about the distinguished competition, also known as DC Comics, also known as Warner Brothers. Now, again, if you've ever listened to the show, you know that it's not often we heap a lot of praise on the distinguished competition. There's good reason for that. Phil can testify to this one as well. Not everything we get from DC is on point. And that's not me hating. That's me stating. Man, I'm going to put that on a t-shirt. That's good. But it's just how it is, man. And that's not comparing them to anyone. That's just, as we've said multiple times, and this is the t-shirt also, everything's on fire in the DC Extended Universe. Scorched earth, as far as the eye can see. Like, if you're laughing, you know I'm right. Every film, Phil, is scorched earth to this point. And, like, there's been very few gems, in my opinion, other than Peacemaker. Suicide Squad, like the new Suicide Squad. Dude, there's a few gems. But for a lot of the time, it's just, oh, man, they're setting fire to everything again, huh? Oh, here we go again. Well, guess what? They did it here also with Flashpoint. Except this time, man, this is epic. Phil, let me ask you. DC loves these epic crossovers. They love the epic Armageddon. It's doomsday, literally. The world's coming to an end. Not only that, screw that. Every planet, every universe, every reality, we're burning it all down. Again, we're setting fire to everything. Flashpoint's really no different. But at the heart of this angle, at the heart of this storyline, to use pro wrestling terms, at the heart of this story, Phil, is a really, really good story. This boils down to one man who had his heart broken as a child, and he wants to fix it. So I set you up. It's a good intro, right? So, Phil, when's the last time you even thought about this story, whether it's comic book, animated film, or even the Flash TV show? Um, when's the last time you kind of revisited or visited any of this storyline at all? And what's your overall take on the Flashpoint storyline?
I did not read the comic. I know that Geoff Johns had took over and he pretty much made his vision for Flash in the same way that he did with Green Lantern. And I wasn't big into it. I was a big Wally fan growing up. Wally was my Flash when I was growing up. I had no experience with Barry Allen as Flash. Um, like I just didn't know Barry Allen because Barry Allen was dead by the time I started reading comics. So the Flash I grew up with was Wally West, whether that be from Teen Titans or the Justice League cartoon or any of the other media that had Flash in it. That was the Flash I knew. So when he brought Barry Allen back, I was like, okay, but what's happening on Wally? That was my question the entire time. And so I think that he's done interesting things with the character. Of course, that became like the blueprint for what the Flash TV show became. Um, but I can't say that I kept up with it.
Well, okay, so understanding that, so really your points of reference are basically the animated film and maybe that in a combination of the TV show. So in terms of the idea, and we'll boil it down to that, this idea that Barry Allen, and guess what, kids, spoiler alert, Barry Allen's mom died a whole long time ago, and it's kind of, not how he became Flash, but it's kind of one of his driving motivations as a hero today, okay? Long story short. But Phil, what about this idea that for everything he can do, the one thing that still haunts him to this day is the death of his mother, okay? And finally, after X number of years of being the Flash, he has this idea, he's illuminated one day and says, I'm going to go back and fix this. Like, it's a very human story at its core, is it not? Like this idea that he doesn't want to hurt anymore. He wants to bring her back and fix what happened to begin with. That's a very relatable issue, right?
Yeah, absolutely. DC sure does like its gloom and doom. It definitely likes its gloom and doom. Um, and of course, it wouldn't be DC if it wasn't like, all right, well, it's a butterfly effect, but it's not like it's this butterfly effect that affected everything in Flash's personal life. No, it has to turn everybody, all the other heroes, into bad guys and to turn people into jerks. All of a sudden, this one thing is the thing that turns Aquaman and Wonder Woman into like these megalomaniacs, and it's like, of course, because it's DC.
Yeah, nothing went right. Like, yeah, because like when he kind of wakes up in I guess Central PD headquarters, right? But like when like he takes a nap or whatever, when he wakes up, like the first thing he sees is Armageddon or whatever. Armageddon's coming or some whatever the headline is. Like automatically things have gone to hell because he's not the Flash. I mean, have we, and by we I mean everybody, including the publisher, have we kind of missed the point here that because he didn't become the Flash, that's what spurred all this on? We look at everything going on around him, but we don't really. It's like the story of It's a Wonderful Life. He wanted to know what life would look like had he never been born. So the angel showed him. Clarence shows him, and everyone he'd ever come into contact with was forever altered because they never knew him. So that explains what happened to this world, right? I mean, did we get that said enough, you think, or did we just kind of get wrapped up in what's going on around him?
Uh, I think in the movie, I think it gave us a nice snapshot of who Flash is as a character. But I think the difference between the comic, of course, is that the comic will give you more background into not just who he is, but who all these characters are and how much Flashpoint affected them. When I went back and did research before watching this, I learned a lot more about, you know, kind of the world building that Flashpoint did, and you don't really get an idea of that in the movie because it's just not enough real estate to do that in a 2 hour movie.
Well said, well said, well said. Great way to say it for sure. The comic's exceptional, by the way, Phil. Um, I never collected the issues, but I got the trade paperback. It's very much worth your time if you ever want to get it off Amazon. It's worth it because it's really good. Um, the art is fantastic. It's Andy Kubert. I mean, of course, the art's fantastic because it's him. I've always considered Andy Kubert to be sort of a Jim Lee hybrid. All due respect to Andy Kubert because I love his style. Geoff Johns, the writer, of course. I mean, it's a great book. It really is good. And the movie for the most part keeps to it, as you said. It's very much summarized. It can't be the full book, obviously, because this thing would have been like 6 hours long, more than likely, in order to get everything from the book. Um, Before we really get into this and sort of what happens, you and I talked about this, and I don't remember what episode it was. We've done a bunch of these, Phil. You and I. Uh, I'm going to maintain to you, in my opinion, I'm going to get your take because I don't remember what your take was. It's been a while since we talked about the Flash, right? I maintain that the Scarlet Speedster is one of the most powerful beings in either DC or Marvel, especially in DC, because he has the power of time travel and he can do it anytime he wants to. And that is a lot of power for one person to have. Like everyone's terrified of Superman. What if Superman turns heel? Oh, what if he goes rogue? I think people have more to worry about with the Flash than they do Superman. I mean, dude, what do you think about this idea that the Flash is one of the most powerful beings in the DC universe?
I mean, yeah, I mean, of course, I think put somebody that can time travel and have an effect on the world at large like this and create such a massive paradox. It's got to be one of the most powerful characters in the universe.
And of course, he's not going to do that with evil intentions because he is a good guy. Um, I've also said in the past that the TV show Barry Allen, played splendidly by Grant Gustin, who should have been the Flash. In the movies, we'll get to that one, kids. He is Peter Parker. The Grant Gustin Barry Allen is 100% Peter Parker. He screws up all the time. And even when he thinks he's doing something right, he screws that up. His friends get upset with him because he always wants to do the right thing and he screws up. He's very, very human. He makes mistakes all the time. He's not perfect. Um, I think the Flash TV show has done more for that publisher, in my opinion, in the past 20 years than I think the movies have done for them in the past 10. That's just how I see it. What's your take on the Flash as a character from the TV show versus the books? Do you think that one's stronger than the other?
I think the Flash in the TV show definitely made Barry Allen more likable, because you're getting a younger Flash and um, you're getting to go on a journey with him. It's kind of annoying because as a Wally West fan, I feel like that's what we got as Wally West. We got to grow up with
Mm.
Wally West. And so I feel like that was a big part of the appeal of him as Flash. And they kind of took that and added it to Barry Allen in the television show where we got to
Mm.
it wasn't so much growing up with him from a teenager, but just growing up with him from where he started. Because we don't always get that backstory with Barry because um, early on, at least in the earlier Flash comics, correct me if I'm wrong, but we get Barry already as a forensic scientist and all these other things, and so we don't get any of the development that we get here in the show.
Very true. Yeah, for sure. And plus, the Flash from I guess this would be the 70s when they reintroduced the character, right? The Silver Age. He is pretty straight laced. Of course he is. It's the time period, 60s, 70s, whatever it is. But yeah, I would say, kind of a dull character in my opinion. The
Yeah,
suit sets him apart from everyone else for sure. I still love the classic red and gold though.
of course. And I do think that Jeff did things with him when he brought him back to give him more development, giving him the backstory with his father being in jail and his mother being killed, and setting up certain things with Zoom. Um, and those things are interesting. But I do think that the TV show, which Jeff also had input on, did a better job of developing him as a likable character outside of the suit.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, well said. Um, So, okay, all right. And listen, I don't discount your view on Wally West. I remember when they introduced the character, and I went back to collecting Flash because I don't think I had in a while. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give it a spin and see what I like. I remember the covers being really well done, and I liked the story of this. There's a new Flash, guys. I mean, it was kind of cool. Um, Are you also a Kyle Rayner Green Lantern guy as well? Or are you Hal Jordan?
Um, Green Lantern is interesting because I never really collected Green Lantern comics.
Hmm.
Uh, because like I said, with DC, a lot of my love for Justice League and those characters came from the animated series that came out. So a lot of my fandom for Green Lantern is with John Stewart because that was the Green Lantern that I was really
Oh
introduced
yeah.
to. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Like I was never really big into Kyle Rayner. I like Kyle Rayner's suit. I like the idea that he was a graphic designer, and that's why he was chosen because of his creativity. And
Mhm.
I just like the idea of an artist being a superhero. I mean, as somebody that grew up drawing and a lot of things, that was cool to me. Um, I've always thought Hal was kind of a boring character. I don't know why. It's just something about him. It's like, and I like him a lot in New Frontier. But I never was really a big Hal fan.
Yeah, I think the character plays well because you can always tie in that Tom Cruise Top Gun Maverick, and you could make the case that without Hal Jordan as Green Lantern, that character doesn't happen. I'll make that case because I
Yeah,
think that's direct inspiration for sure.
yeah, for sure.
Um, yeah, I see where you're coming from, and dude, folks, if you don't collect comics, let me just tell you about the hate leveled at a character that's not real. The character of Kyle Rayner. Oh my God in heaven. Like, you think it's toxic today, and you're right, by the way, it is. But even then, fanboys raging over something that's not real. Not even an actor. Well, this actor that played Kyle Rayner. No, 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 no. Kyle Rayner's not been portrayed anywhere. So that never happened. Still hasn't happened. They hated the character that wasn't real. I don't know. It's like hating the Scarlet Spider, right? The Ben Riley Spider Man. I mean, I get it to some degree. I do get it. Ben Parker, right? What was his name? Ben Riley.
Yeah, Ben Riley.
Yeah, I get it. I get it to a certain degree. I was in that camp also. I'm like, you didn't need to reinvent Spider Man. Spider Man's great, but I didn't spend my days and night raging over the fact that they changed it.
Yeah, legacy characters are so controversial because
Yeah.
it's so easy to understand. Like I had most of my experience with Peter Parker, and so once you change him, it's like, well, who's this guy? I'm not into
Yeah.
Ben Riley. I'm into Peter Parker. Like, who's this guy? But some
Yep.
people, when they discover Spider Man, that was their Spider Man, Ben Riley.
Mhm.
The thing that makes Wally so interesting is that Barry Allen was one of those deaths in comics that they protected for a long time. They didn't bring
Mhm.
him back for a long time. I mean, Wally West was Flash for most all the way up into my adult life. Like Wally was Flash from the 80s up into the 2000s.
Mhm.
Um, so it wasn't like Spider-Man where, Spider-Man was gone for a year or so and then he came back. Or when they did that weird change with Superman when he had like the blue electric powers and then like after a while it went away and like that's the
Yeah.
Superman some people knew, but you know, it's not like he stayed that Superman for a decade.
Yeah. The red and blue Flash, or excuse me, the red and blue Superman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a
Uh,
there's a weird time. I really did like that design. I thought it was a cool design, but that's it's not Superman. When you look at it, it's like, who is this character?
no kidding. Um, if Flashpoint does nothing else at all, I think it really did get back to the heart of what makes Barry Allen work, why this character works, and you cannot discount the TV show, ladies and gentlemen. You can't. If you do, you're crazy. If you say to me that the show doesn't matter, you're not. I'm sorry. I'll challenge your fanboyness. Because seriously, the show has made a world of difference. Combined with the books in turn, Hey, made a real difference in redefining who Barry Allen the character is. People care about Barry Allen now more than they ever cared about him before, in my opinion. They just cared about him because, like you say, he's a legacy character. But I don't think they cared about him like that now, because they care about him because they feel it. I mean, and again, if you're going to and Grant Gustin would hand it to the writers, because that's the kind of guy Grant is. But hand it to Grant Gustin for bringing this guy to life like no one ever has. And that counts today. All right. And again, we'll get there. Dude, he exemplifies what the best parts of this character. I mean, you could make the case that without the TV show, we wouldn't even care about the Flash at this point. Even, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't think Grant Gustin gets enough credit here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I really like Grant a lot in the role. And I think what you're saying is so apt in that he's very much a lot like Peter Parker. Um, because he's just such a likable young character. And I think for any failings that I've had with the rebrand of Barry Allen is that I don't know, the character just felt dated, and I think that the show did a better job of trying to making him into a contemporary character.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, why is he so relatable? Why do people care? Because he's not perfect. He may have amazing powers, but he is, I'm going to say it, he's a Marvel character, man. Number one, he didn't ask for this. Number two, it's not about the suit. Number three, it's not about the Flash. It's about him. It's about Barry. That show's about Barry Allen. They put him in a suit, and they put a lot of other people in suits, but that cowl comes off his head all the time. The mask comes off his face because the show's about Barry Allen. That's a very Marvel thing to do, because again, the story of Captain America is not the story of the man that wears is about the flag. It's about Steve Rogers. It's the same thing here. The story of Spider-Man is a story of Peter Parker and how he gets along because the powers made his life worse, not better. I mean, I'm telling you, I think this idea that powers are going to fix everything. I mean, I see a lot of borrowing on the part of DC from the Marvel universe. And I'm not saying, I use the word borrowing because that's what I consider it. I don't think it's anything other than that, but it's the idea of we got to F this guy up. We got to give people reason to care. And Phil, any good writer will tell you, if you want people to care about your main character, you destroy that character, you destroy his world. And then the story is in that character building himself back up from the ashes, which is kind of Barry. Everything gets screwed up because he has the powers. I mean that's a win for Warner Brothers, isn't it? The fact that this show even exists in the first place and has done as well as it has.
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think so. It's just Jeff definitely has his I was gonna say his writing crutches, but I don't want to frame it that way because he definitely has his tendencies as a writer. He has his patterns that he likes to go back to as a writer. I don't like to say crutch because that makes it seem like it's a weakness in his writing. Uh, because he may do things that I may or may not agree with, but somebody else somewhere might like them.
Give me an example of what you're saying, what you're talking about.
I think that he did a very good job at one point of bringing the DC characters into the modern era, and I think with that, um, he always finds a way to bring like these dark twists to it. It's always got to be like this very dark and graphic, and very violent turn of events, and that's fine. I've enjoyed a lot of stuff that Jeff writes, but you can definitely tell that that's his style of writing. It's just kind of like Mark Millar. Mark Millar has his way of writing.
I agree with that. What about this is a rabbit hole you and I have gone down multiple times in the past on this very show. This whole notion that DC has to burn everything to the ground. I opened with that joke, but it's true. I mean, we you know how long it took to get that in a Marvel film. We didn't get that until We didn't get that until Endgame. Really, we didn't get that until the Thanos movies and the Avengers. We didn't get that till then. It took that long to get Scorched Earth. Really, like, do you think at some level the powers that be in that publisher, even with the books, has said, look, we got to differentiate ourselves from the other guys. Scorched Earth, destroy it, burn it down, redo it. We have to do this. We don't have a choice. Do you think that's maybe a conversation? Because we joke that it is. You think that's actually being said over there?
Um, I don't know. Uh, I I don't know because I do think that they have a tendency to go into the gloom and doom. I mean, if you look at their big events, like Infinite Crisis and a lot of that stuff, like it's built around doomsday, gloom and doom. It's something they always go back to, and I guess it's also fair to say that doomsday and uh, saving the world at the brink of apocalypse is a very comic book trope, and DC does it better than anybody. But
Mm.
they revisit that well a lot. It just seems like we have gotten so many things that happened in like a dystopian future, or something that happens like at the at the at the brink of everything getting ready to collapse. That's their bread and butter over there.
It is. It's like they I used the word deconstructing earlier, but that's very much what they do. It's like hey, remember how Batman used to be smiling and Robin? Guess what? Not anymore. Now he kills people. And it's like they just want to take everything that you grew up with and just and not wreck it. Like, to me, it, from where I'm sitting, maybe others have a different take. Flashpoint is deconstructing for the right reasons, because it's like there's a story here. The story is, at the end of the day, this guy really missed his mom and really wanted to correct it, and said, you know what? I got the power to do this. I'm going to correct it. But not realizing their circumstances. To every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction, right? There's going to be something. So, like, he doesn't think about that at all. So at the heart of this story is a really good story, in my opinion. I don't think they're doing it for the sake of doing it, but a lot of times they do it for the sake of doing it. Like, they just have to, take these heroes and destroy them in front of your very eyes and say, they have to remind you that the guy that created Wonder Woman was into sadomasochism and bondage. And like, they got to hold that over your head as if to say, well, you know where it came from. Ha. And I'm like, okay, what do you more do you want from me? I get it. The character has weird roots, whatever. Like, I don't know, man. I swear to you, I think it's some sort of effort on the behalf of that publisher to say we have to. It's a narrative. Everyone has to stick to this narrative. It's like, I don't know. Maybe am I reading too much into it?
I don't know. I can see it. But again, I just think that they do it so well. Maybe they know that that's something that they can always go back to. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but like you said, that no one really does it like them. But again, with the other guys, it really wasn't until Avengers: Infinity War that we really saw it on the big screen. Let's dive into this story, man. A lot of weird things happen in this story, things you don't expect. Kudos to Geoff Johns, honestly, because there's some great twists in this. Um, I think, and I'm gonna go ahead and get to it because I think it's the biggest twist. I think there's two huge twists in this story. One, of course, is that, when Flash wakes up, first of all, he doesn't even remember saving his mom, does he? He doesn't even remember actually doing that. He
No.
just wakes up, which is odd. But, again, it's the time traveling thing is messing with him. Um, we have the Dark Knight detective. We have Batman, but he's a little bit different. What did you think about the twist of this isn't Bruce Wayne, this is Thomas Wayne?
Um, it was definitely weird seeing him the first time and seeing him um fighting Yo Yo. That was the Joker's minion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he's like shooting. He's like in the John Woo movie. He's got two guns up shooting. I was like, whoa, whoa, wait a minute. Uh, yeah, it's weird seeing Batman using a gun. But I think Thomas Wayne in Flashpoint is just such a fascinating character. I thought that the change is very interesting. Um, I thought the changes to everything about Batman's mythos worked here. It's a good Elseworld story of Thomas being Batman, and Martha being Joker. Uh, it's cool. I don't know if I need like a ongoing series based off of that, but it's a cool idea.
Yeah, it's very different. And then, the second twist being that Martha Wayne is the Joker. Um I when she takes her hands away, and of course I honestly I can't remember if I read the book before or after. I honestly I can't remember. But I just remember how striking that visual is of when she takes her hand away from her mouth, her son's blood was on her hands. And she's got a smear as if it's the Joker's smile. And I said, "Oh my God, they've made her the Joker." Like, and I'm kind of glad they didn't go down that road. They didn't go further down that in the movie anyway. Like, they could have done this whole other side story with he's trying to hunt down his wife and can't find her, and she's like, "Oh my God, that would have been insane." But like, two huge twists in this story, man. Like, I didn't see one of those things coming. I mean, they've been talking about doing this on the big screen for a while since Affleck took the cowl. I mean, what do you think about seeing this version of Batman? Do you think we'll get that far in a potential Flash movie that's supposed to happen? Which I told you we're building toward that. I don't want to jump in right now. I don't want to talk about it right now. Do you think we'll get there with the red sun behind the bat on the chest and the red eyes? You think we'll get that far with this?
It doesn't seem like it because for what we know about the movie, they're going with Michael Keaton. Uh, so it looks like there's going to be time travel stuff with the Flash movie. Um, but I don't know if they're doing multiverse stuff because it's hard to tell what they're doing with this Flash movie because it's been in the making for so long and we've heard very little about it. We still don't have a trailer yet, which is crazy. Um, yeah, I don't know. I would like to see them do the Thomas Wayne stuff, but I think that stuff works for comic book fans. Um, I think it's more of a big moment for movie going fans to see Michael Keaton again.
You're right, 100%. And yeah, we're going to get into that freaking movie. I mean, we saw in the flashback of was it Batman v Superman? We got the flashback of Bruce's parents being killed, or was it the Justice League film?
Uh,
We did get a flashback because it wasn't it. Negan was his old man, right? Isn't that how it went?
yes.
Because that's who fans have wanted to see for years play Thomas Wayne. What do you think about that?
I think he'd make a good choice. I think he'd make a good choice if they do this version of Batman. Because he is older and grizzled. Yeah, I think that would be a cool choice. But I don't know if they do that without making the Flashpoint stuff.
Yeah, yeah, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, as Negan, of course. I don't know. I honest to God, I don't think DC can help themselves / Warner Brothers. I think they want to do it so bad they can't stand it. They're just trying to find a way to do it, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see it in the movie. I guess I'm going to have to talk about it, Phil. I made it 30 minutes. I made it 30 minutes and some change. This godforsaken, cursed Flash film that we were supposed to get in calendar year 2022. Now we may get, I don't know when we're supposed to get it now. I don't know what the update is. I haven't kept tabs on it in like a month because it changes every day, it seems. Kids, in case you've been living under a rock, there's another Flash besides this Grant Gustin kid, who, by the way, is doing a bang-up job on the show. They're doing the Lord's work on that show. Not so much in the movie universe, because this wackadoodle dude named Ezra Miller, who just can't stop beating people up, Phil, throwing chairs and whatever he's doing. It's a WrestleMania over there with that kid. I don't know what's going on. Like, Can all right, so the movie's done, right? Except for effects and post-production. It's done. So like, all right, you're an executive, Phil. I'm putting you on the spot. What do you do? Do you go ahead and release this thing when it's done and ready, or what do you do? What do you do about this?
Um, in my opinion, I think they should have scrapped this a long time ago, and they should have recast Flash, and they should have just moved on. But the problem is they've they put too much into this movie. This movie has gone through what, 4 directors at this point. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you've gone through several script rewrites. You've spent millions of dollars on this thing. Um, I think they're too far into this to turn back now. They've decided that we've exhausted enough resources into this thing. We have to kind of go down with the ship on this one. And on some levels, I get it, but I also feel like I don't know, man. Like the last we heard, Henry Cavill might be shooting scenes for it. Uh, they've done several reshoots for this thing. At this point, the budget they've spent $200 million on this movie. Uh, and that's the thing I don't think people get, because I saw when they first talked about still releasing the movie, and they put out that apology, quote unquote, from Ezra Miller. People were saying, well, they canceled that Batgirl movie. Why don't they just cancel this one? No, there's a big difference between eating the amount of money they spent on that Batgirl movie and eating $200 million. They put too much money into this. This movie is going to happen whether you like it or not.
I mean, at this point, I was more interested in seeing the Batgirl project, if not for Michael Keaton in the Flash movie.
Yeah, and the messed up thing is that it seems like the Michael Keaton stuff in the Flash movie was supposed to set up more stuff for Michael Keaton to do in other movies like Batgirl, but this movie keeps getting stalled and they keep having problems. So um, this is where we're at.
June 23rd, 2023. Mark your calendar, Phil. Let's hold the time aside. You fly yourself to the North Carolina, or I'll fly myself to Chicago. We'll go see that movie because, yeah, can't wait. Yeah, I can wait. I don't, you've already spent 200 million. I don't know how many times you physically see Ezra Miller's face in this film. I would guess quite a bunch. It's his movie. I mean, and plus, I heard these people talking about, oh, they should just CGI someone else's face onto Miller's body. I'm like, they couldn't CG a mustache off of Henry Cavill's face. What are we talking about? Like, these are the guys you want to do a whole face in like 40 scenes of a film? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
what do you think about the idea of trying to fix this thing in post and just erase him digitally like, a Star Wars film or something, man? What do you think about that?
Yeah, see, that seems like a legal thing as well. I'm not sure if he is technically in breach of contract at this point. Because if he's in breach of contract, you don't owe him anything. You can just ask him off of here and just go along with like he was never in the movie. But if you're already in contract with this guy and you owe him money, and you owe him, the how do I want to phrase this? You owe him the attempt to promote this movie with him as its leading man. I'm not sure that they can back out without possibly having to deal with a lawsuit. Um, and then the other part is that's kind of easier said than done. It's one thing if you're just editing a guy's tattoo, or like you said, the Henry Cavill facial hair out. We're talking about editing a guy's entire face and likeness out of an entire movie where he's not just a supporting character, he's a leading man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty hard. You got to get somebody to come in and redub voice for it. You're talking about throwing months and months and months of work down the toilet. Yeah, I just don't think they have any interest in doing that.
And according to them, he's in nearly every scene of this film, and he's portraying other characters. He's portraying another Earth's Flash, as we saw in the stills from the movie. We see another guy in a Flash suit similar, and it's Ezra Miller, but it's a different haircut. So we assume he's playing more than one Flash here.
Yeah, so that
And
makes it worse. You've got him not just being a leading man, but you've got him being
Mhm.
another character. So now you're trying to erase two characters out of the movie. It's just too much.
And supposedly this thing was going to be the new cornerstone for sort of them DC getting back into the big movie business, and now it's stalled the way it has. Tom Clark 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark 6M podcast sent you. Let me ask you this. All right, so you're the man, Phil, and you have said, look, kids, we spent $200 million. Let's make the best of this. Let's try to parade him out there if he's physically able. We'll have earpiece in his ear, for God's sake, telling the idiot what to say. Be sure he doesn't hit anybody on the way to the premiere. But do you go back and shoot a scene as it's sort of an appendix to this film and have it post credits where it's Grant Gustin and he is taken, and it's obvious in whatever scene this is, this guy is going to become the Flash that we know moving forward. Ezra Miller's 29. Grant Gustin's 32. They're both, Gustin's still plenty young enough, still in great shape. He still looks great. He's still got the heart for this. Do you go that route, or do you go find another, what I'll call Hollywood film actor to replace Miller? How do you move forward after this film? Because you can explain it with the multiple Earth, can't you? Can't you explain it with the infinite Earth idea?
I guess it depends on how much more Grant Gustin wants to do with the character, of course. But I've never understood recasting the character in the first place. The analogy I've always made is that it would be just like right in the midst of when Daredevil was a breakout hit on Netflix and Charlie Cox is the star of the show and everybody's interested in this show, everybody's talking about the show, and then you announce a Daredevil movie and decide you're going to recast Matt Murdock. Well, why? You already have a Matt Murdock that is in public conscious that everybody knows. Why would you now put another person in the role? So it never made much sense to me. I thought you already had a guy that people knew, and this was a way to connect the TV shows and the movies. Why not just go with Greg Gustin? And even if you weren't going to do that then, I feel like now is the perfect chance to do it because the show is ending. Yeah, why not? Why not just make him the Barry going forward if you want to continue to do movies?
I'll say it. Everyone listening's thinking it. Marvel wouldn't do that.
Well, yeah.
Right? I mean, Marvel's proven once they cast someone, they're sticking with that guy. They're not going to... Dude, they could have bailed on Brie Larson after reviews of Captain Marvel came in. And I get that a lot of it was white boy, fanboy toxicity, male toxicity of every color, really, because dudes tend to hate when women do stuff fun for some stupid reason. But I'm on the record as saying I wasn't overly knocked out by her role, by her job in the role. It didn't mean I want to see her replaced, and good for them for not replacing her because they're sticking to their guns. They could have very easily cut ties with her. They've cut ties with actors before, but because, as we've noted in the Iron Man episodes, Phil, they had good reason to cut ties. But they could have bailed on anyone. They never have, really. So, like, good for them. I mean, Grant Gustin could have done it. Now, to your point, he's been playing the Flash since 2013. It's been that long, Phil. 9 years by this recording. Maybe he would be ready to call it a day. I don't think it's about money. I can't speak for the guy, but how long would he actually be doing this as opposed to the grind of a weekly TV series? I mean, one film every 2 years, maybe? One appearance every so often? I mean, I don't know. Maybe the timing's right after all, dude. I would love to see it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing him get a bigger role in the DC universe as a whole. And I think a lot of his fans from the show would be interested in seeing it. It would be kind of a cool callback moment. But I mean, even if they don't do that, it feels like it would be weird to not acknowledge Grant at all. It seems like he should at least have a cameo if they're doing the multiverse stuff.
I think there was something that was said that he's definitely in this film, and it may not be for long, but he shows up, and I forget where I read that,
Yeah,
but that it's yeah,
I mean, Ezra Miller showed up in an episode of Flash, so I mean, it could happen.
true. Hilarious, by the way. Mizra, listen, Ezra Miller's not a bad actor. I'm not dumping on the guy. I'm dumping on it because he's out of his mind. But his acting, he's not a bad actor. That spot in the Flash, I thought was extremely well done. Like them admiring each other's suits, and that was hilarious to me, man. I loved it. Let's jump into the voice cast, and then I want to jump back to the show here because I want to get off this movie stuff. It's dragging me down. It's ruining my day. Let's see. We've got Justin Chambers, who sort of made his claim to fame on Grey's Anatomy as Barry Allen / The Flash. Fantastic job in this. C. Thomas Howell as Eobard Thawne as / Professor Zoom, Reverse Flash as he's also known. Kevin Conroy, the great Kevin Conroy, kids. You can't say that name without saying the great in front of it as Bruce Wayne / Batman. Kevin McKidd as Thomas Wayne. Also from Grey's Anatomy. They just went to that studio and said, hey, and you guys want to do this Batman thing? And they got him. Michael B. Jordan as Cyborg. Fantastic. Dude, talk about this cast, man. Was this voice cast working for you for this film or what?
Yeah, I thought this was a great voice cast. At first, I didn't look at any of the credits. So at first, when I was first watching it, I was like, "This Michael B. Jordan. It sounds like him." But yeah, no, I thought this was a star-studded cast. I mean, anytime you can get like well-known movie stars in the same cast as somebody as beloved as Kevin Conroy, so it's a great move.
Cary Elwes, which I'm sure everyone always mispronounces his last name, probably me, as Aquaman. Fantastic. Great voice. Nathan Fillion, of course, as Hal Jordan, because Phil, the story for years has been, man, they should get Nathan Fillion to play Hal Jordan because he kind of looks like it. That'd be great.
Yeah,
and I love that he got that gig. So good.
Yeah, I know he gets tossed around a lot for Hal Jordan or Booster Gold.
Oh yeah, very true, very true. Let's see who else we got here. We've got D. Bradley Baker as Etrigan the Demon. Doesn't get very much to do in this film, but good stuff anyway. Steve Bloom as Lex Luthor.
Legendary voice actor.
Yes. Mr. Luthor. Yes, he was Spike Spiegel in Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, I mean, countless things this guy has done voice acting for. Yeah. His resume is crazy.
Done Wolverine in the past as well.
Countless anime voice work. Tons of stuff from the 90s that you can think of Steve Bloom from. He was the voice of the host of Toonami, correct? Tom.
Ah, very well done. Yeah. Very well done. Sam Daly as Kal-El. We can't really call him Clark Kent because he's not Clark Kent. Who's actually Tim Daly's son. And Tim Daly, of course, is the voice of Superman. So well done. I actually didn't know that till researching the voice cast. Dana Delaney is Lois Lane. She's great. I'll always know her from Tombstone, no matter what she does. The great Ron Perlman as Deathstroke. I'm sorry. I think Ron Perlman should be Deathstroke now. Like, for real, man. Can you imagine him in that suit and those swords? Shut up.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know how they could pull it off, but it'd be interesting to see him do something else comic book related.
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. As we said, impressive voice cast here. I can't. Everything is fantastic. Kevin Michael Richardson as the president. We don't hear him very much, but another great voice actor for sure. Really good stuff, man. Steve Trevor's in this film. James Patrick Stewart is Steve Trevor. Don't know his extended voice work, but he's pretty good here. Yeah, I'm bowled over at how good this voice cast is. I really enjoy the film. I think it does what it needs to do. It's violent, kids. This is not a yeah. Don't let your little ones see. There's kids getting killed in this. Thankfully they call them the Shazam kids. Is how Thomas Wayne refers to them. But not for nothing, Phil. Wonder Woman flat out kills the kid. Like, and thank God it happens off camera. But like, there's no mercy here at all. It's DC though, right? It's how they roll.
Yeah, they just I feel like there's this I feel like there is this want for a lot of creators with DC for some reason to turn Wonder Woman into Xena and have her be super ultra violent. It just so like in this movie, she does a lot of very violent things.
Mm-hmm.
She's very cold, and it's just like this is not the Wonder Woman that you grew up with. And that's fine because it's an elseworld character. But there's some fascination with making her into the character that just lops off people's head for some reason.
I'm telling you, I think it's connected. I think it's all connected back to the roots of the character. It's something about this dominant female who's destroying every man that she comes in contact with. I mean, I think there's some sick, twisted fascination, whether it's ever talked about. I think there's something to be said about, first of all, most of the time this character is practically naked. I mean, the character walks around in a bathing suit most of the time, the way it looks. The men are covered from head to toe, but she's got to be showing her midriff like all the time. I mean, the variations of the costume have changed over the years, but you get the point. I mean, I don't know, dude. This stuff's written by men for a large part, most of the time, a lot of the time, I should say. I mean, I think there's some underlying stuff there that maybe, again, it's not said out loud, but it's used anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think for some people, she's an Amazonian character and she's a warrior, and so it just makes sense to some people to make her into a sword and shield wielding character. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know. I do think that some people have this fascination with her. It's strange. It's strange. Uh, and that's not to say I don't like some of those depictions of her, but it's just so jarring compared to other depictions of her.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement. I don't get it either. I guess if it had been done one time, that'd be different. But it's they go back to the well a lot with this character. You're right, and they did it in. Did you ever pick up on Armageddon 2001 that storyline?
I didn't.
Because that was huge in DC Comics for a while. Do you remember that one?
I didn't.
Because they kept I forget the name of the character, but there was a character sort of there who was responsible for all this, and I think it was Captain Atom at the end of the day because it seemed like he was the most powerful character in DCU at that time. But every book was intertwined, and this idea of Armageddon 2001, everything had changed. Wonder Woman was healed along with Superman. They were a couple because, of course, they have to be a couple. Um, so yeah, I liked it. It was different. At least in Flashpoint, it was Aquaman this time with Wonder Woman. At least they switched it up a little bit. Um, Phil, I always throw you and it's a softball question, really, but for no other reason than it kind of has to be. What do you think of the plot of whatever we're reviewing? I mean, this is a pretty easy plot, dude. World's going to end. They may as well give it a shot and go try to stop it. I mean, it's pretty easy plot here, isn't it? I mean, honestly, even without the Flash time travel stuff.
Yeah, I think that I think the immediate plot of Barry being stuck in a different timeline and not knowing how he got there is a good story. Um, it gets pretty outlandish when it's like, all right, well, Aquaman and Wonder Woman are warring with each other, but in the midst of that, they're just destroying all of Europe, and it's like, well, why? Why didn't they just go to each other's homelands and fight each other on their own turf? Like, why isn't he like going to Themyscira uh to fight her? Why aren't they going to Atlantis? It's just kind of like, oh well, no, this is all bled into the into the surface world where they're just destroying all of Europe for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah, good call.
And England is new Themyscira, I guess, and I guess we're supposed to think that Wonder Woman is like this conquering Attila the Hun type character, but they don't really give you enough backstory to understand why she would be doing that.
Mm-hmm. You're 100% right. And dude, I can't stress how important the main point of this story, Phil, is that all of this happened because Barry Allen never became the Flash. All of this happened. That's the answer, right? When you take the Flash out of the equation, the world's effed up. The whole thing is. It begins effed up when he wakes up. Like, and I think that is, like, as you said earlier, butterfly effect. Well said. It's one part for me. It's one part. Barry Allen was such an unheralded force in that team, on that team, and number two, the butterfly effect. Him not becoming Flash caused other things to happen. And had he become the Flash and was killed in his first year, maybe none of this happens, right? But the fact that he doesn't become the Flash at all caused a chain reaction of events, hence the butterfly effect, that all of these things happen. Now, this doesn't explain why, and maybe this is where it falls on its face, Phil, exactly what I'm saying. This doesn't explain how Bruce Wayne is killed instead of Thomas Wayne.
Uh,
So maybe my theory doesn't work here.
well, I think it works better in the Justice League show when they did the Justice Lords arc, where Wally got killed, and that was the thing that hardened the other members of the team because they already knew him. Um, all of these other things that affected the Justice League characters and changed the trajectory of their lives happened before they met Wally. Like, for example, Superman's ship does not land in Kansas; it lands in Metropolis. Why would him not being Flash affect that? Or
Right.
why would him saving his mother and never becoming Flash affect Bruce Wayne's life that way? Or why would it affect Aquaman being taken back to Atlantean instead of growing up on the surface? Like, we don't. I guess the comic book science answer that Dawn gives us is that it caused the paradox was so powerful that it created this shockwave that caused all these other things to happen.
Honestly, I'll buy that. I don't think that's a cop out. I mean, to us, because we compare this to every other piece of time travel fiction we've ever read or seen, right? You want to argue the point and say, no, it wouldn't, but we don't know. Honestly, I'll take his explanation because it kind of makes a lot of sense because we really don't know the answer, do we?
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's a cop out. I just think that the Justice Lord story works better because you can see his immediate
Right.
effect on those characters, and we're given like a real comic booky science answer here that works, but it's such a drastic change that you have to buy into comic book science to be like, yeah, that works.
Yeah, right. Switching gears just for a sec, what did you think about the abridged version of this story on the TV series? Do you think that it wasn't exactly the same story, right? But do you think they did enough justice to coin a word? I mean, do you think it worked? Should it have been longer? Do you think it fit? What do you think about that?
So what season did that happen in? Because I fell off of the TV show for a long time and I missed a lot of episodes. So I may have
That
missed the
was
Flashpoint
season
episode.
3. Yeah, it was the last episode of season 2. He and Iris are trying to figure things out, and she kisses him for the first time, and she basically tells him, "You need to go figure out whatever you have to do to figure it out. Go do it." So he runs back in time at the end of the last episode of season 2, saves his mother, and it's a cliffhanger. So season 3 starts off with everything's different. Both of his parents are alive. He's still living at home with them. He couldn't be happier, and everything seems to be fine until it's not. So it's basically just a version of
Oh yeah, now I
Flashpoint.
remember. Yeah, because he
Yeah.
goes back in time a few times and tries to fix things, and
Yeah.
he makes the same mistake a few times. Like I know when the other Flash from the other universe comes and he looks like his dad,
Yep.
gets obsessed with trying to fix that. Um, I thought it was fine for a few episodes. Because it only affected his immediate family and it only affected his immediate universe. It felt it felt more intimate. But if you're looking like for like this big um, world changing event, this is better because it includes all of the Justice League and it's a big global threat.
And honestly, Phil, they're working with the TV budget, no matter how successful the TV show
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
You know, like I mean, you know, like special effects take time, shots take time. I mean, these days, if it were a streaming service, they absolutely would do this. Probably, like it, you know, it'd be HBO throw all the money in the world at it, or they wouldn't. Turns out, um, dude, I kind of went. I'm going back to this question again. We don't know what this movie is going to look like. Hoy, the movie. We don't know what this film's going to look like. We're just all guessing. It's basically going to mirror a lot of what, not a lot of it, but it's going to be maybe more the multiverse kind of idea for DC, Infinite Earth kind of thing. Do you think that Flashpoint, barring anything that happens with this Flash flick, would you like to see Flashpoint played out on the big screen? And if the answer is yes, do you think they can do it in one film? Just one film?
I think it would be a mistake to try and do it in one film. I think it's one of those things that you can tell that story across two movies. Um, but you kind of have to have your ducks in a row to do that.
Mm.
I think that's the kind of thing you could do if you had already set up a universe and gave us good Batman movies and good Superman movies so that we care enough about the change. Because if you just dump this on us cold with and make all these changes, the average person knows enough about Wonder Woman to go, that's not the Wonder Woman I grew up with. But it matters more if you have had like 4 movies with Gal Gadot in the role, and then you change the character so drastically.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, Phil, I guess my idea falls on its face after you haven't put you know you everything's predicated on them not screwing up the solo movies to begin with. Oh shucks, Phil, I guess we're not going to get that Flashpoint film because
Yeah, it's possible. It's just I
yeah,
don't know. They got a lot of work to do that.
yeah. I don't. I think it's more than 200 million. I think that's a lot more money thrown at it, and I
Yeah,
just.
you got a lot of world building to do if you do that. I don't think you could just decide we're
Mhm.
going to do that as a one-off film.
I mean, it took how many films before we ever actually, you know, traded hands with Thanos?
Right. I mean to be fair, it'd be like if you tried to take something as big as the original Secret War crossover and tried to
Mm.
do that without any setup. It's going to be hard to
Ooh,
just do that in a 2-hour movie.
yeah. It's funny, man, because we continue to bump into this thing where they can nail it in the books, they can nail it on TV, they can nail it in animated film, and then live action, it just goes to hell. Like it's mind blowing. I mean, what do you think about that, Phil? The idea that it can't come together live action.
I mean, I just think that you're serving different masters, you're serving different audiences. Uh, because as much as I enjoy the animated films, I know that there's a different audience that will go and watch the animated films. Because I feel like a lot of that fan base is fans that are already into the comics. Um, so you're more willing to accept certain things in the animated film that an average moviegoer is not going to be into. Um, and that's not to
Mm.
say that they wouldn't be into it if you give them a good movie. But I do think it's easier to sell comic book fans on stuff that happens in animated films and the TV shows because we're already invested. They already have our money. Um, it's kind of like the wrestling ad. It's just like, uh, yeah, I can get certain wrestling fans to buy into something like New Japan and AEW doing a show together because you guys are already wrestling fans. You're already into these things. Um, but when you try to do something on a global scale, it's harder to get all fans interested into that. And so I think they have a tough task in making feature films because they keep thinking, all right, how do we sell this to casual fans as well?
Mm. I mean, yeah, because casual fans want to see Batman and Superman teaming up and fighting crime together. right? I mean,
Right.
that's what casual fans want to see.
I mean, I think there's a good amount of casual fans that just want a good Justice League movie, and I think
Hmm.
that they keep trying to uh, get they keep trying to jump ahead instead of doing the work to make it interesting. I mean, there's a fair point to say that you could just bring these characters together in one movie, and it's off to the races. But I think the hard thing about that is you still have to set this up in an interesting way and do some world building where people want to keep revisiting the franchise.
Yeah, yeah, because it's no matter how well this movie does, you always want to do another one if it does well. But
Right.
yeah, getting people to invest 2 hours in anything is not the easiest thing in the world. I mean,
It's
people
hard.
are content junkies, right? But it has to be good content, doesn't it?
Correct. And the thing is, we're just so spoiled. There's so much content at our fingertips, and I think that's the other thing with the TV shows and the cartoons is that uh, you can always go and binge watch those things somewhere. You can always go and find those things on HBO Max or wherever. When they used to have the old DC app where you could watch stuff, but a movie is different because they're trying to get as much money out of a theatrical release as they can. And so they're trying to galvanize as much interest at one time period as they can. And it's a little bit harder than that. Um, it's just different fan bases. It's hard to please different fan bases. Some people are always going to pull up for anything DC related because they have diehard DC fans out there. But there are some casual fans that are not going to be as interested in everything they do.
I still, and we mentioned this during our Justice League episodes where we attempted to understand what the point was. Um, I maintain they want to do injustice so bad they can't stand it. And I think, not think, you know what I mean? Listen, all signs pointed to injustice. That's what they were pointing toward. And when the Zack Snyder thing went off the rails in a big bad way, they scrapped it. And I don't know if anyone's ever admitted to that. Dude, they were heading toward injustice. Didn't it feel like that to you?
I do think that they have this obsession of doing this Superman goes bad storyline and having the Justice League having to go up against him. And it seems like, from what I read of the script for Justice League 2, that's where they were heading. But I'm not sure if it's exactly injustice. I think it's the core idea of injustice that all of the DC heroes are one decision away from turning into supervillains. And they
Mm.
just keep going back to this theme. And I mean, that's a big part of the theme of this movie. um, and it's just, I think that idea is more interesting to them than it really is. I think it's okay to do that as an Elseworld thing, but some people just want a Justice League movie first.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that so hard? Yes is the answer. Yes, it's that hard.
Yeah, it shouldn't be that hard. I feel like
No.
um, Justice League is a more recognizable uh, property than Avengers was. That was definitely the case 10 years ago, and I think it still is the case today. I mean, no matter how popular Avengers has gotten, um, Justice League is still like the premier superhero team. And it shouldn't be that hard to just do a Justice League movie, but they keep trying to uh go and do something else and give us an Elseworld type story first. And it's just like, well, that's cool, but I kind of just want the Justice League to do cool stuff and be superheroes.
And you know what? I agree with your point that they want you to believe that every Justice Leaguer is one bad decision away from turning heel. Then you're not a hero. I mean, in my opinion, if that's true, you're not a hero. That's if to say we're all one bad decision away from getting locked up. Really? Like, if I do something wrong tomorrow, I'm not talking about premeditated, cold blooded, I planned something terrible. But one bad decision is maybe I shouldn't have ran that red light. You know what I mean? But let's say something horrible happens and I'm to blame. Do I spend the rest of my days in prison? Probably not, because they're going to look at my record and see I have a clean driving record. Never been arrested, never been locked up, never been in trouble, hadn't had a speeding ticket in 10 years or better. They're going to take that into account. No, it doesn't mean that my life is ruined. but that's what they will expect us to believe here. Like you said, I mean, is that on its face too much to believe right away?
Uh, I mean, I, I don't think that it's hard to believe, but I think that it flies in the face of a lot of the fundamental um, comic book tropes that are behind some of these characters. Um,
Mm, yeah.
like Superman, for example, um, it works if you take out of the scenario that he grew up having a simple life with two
Mm,
parents that instilled in him right, right and wrong, right? Um, but at the same time, Batman has such a rigid belief of right and wrong that he has constructed on his own, based off of a traumatic incident that happened to him. So to then say, all right, well, that traumatic incident happened to him, so a even bigger traumatic incident will cause him to go too far. That kind of flies in the face of who Batman is, because really that's the thing that Joker has been trying to taunt him with for years. That, oh,
yeah.
you're one big mistake away from being like me, and he always proves him wrong. So once you actually buy into that and make him into a villain, it's like, well, what is really the point of any of this? And that's not to say that some of that stuff is not interesting. Again, Elseworld stuff is fun, but
Sure.
I don't know. I think we believe in these characters because we want to believe that uh deep down the world isn't as cold and dark as we think it is. Like if I just wanted to take this cynical worldview into everything, then I wouldn't read comics at all. I would just watch the news and watch a bunch of real life stuff because we get enough of that every day. Um, when you immerse yourself in the comics, you don't want to go into this dour, pessimistic view of the world.
Yeah, because this is supposed to be escapism at its finest.
Yeah, and I mean, look, there's nothing wrong with escaping into things that are dark. I think that is the appeal of great things like the Dark Knight Rises or uh, Watchmen, or a lot of the stuff that Frank Miller wrote. But I don't need all of my comics to be that.
No, I don't either. I think small doses. But yeah, I mean, again, kids, this publisher fascination with turning everybody sour and dour is insane. We talked about Superman. I got to get your take on this. They basically eliminated him from this story as a major character, and I happen to think it's brilliant because this could have very easily turned into a Superman story. But every story in DC is essentially about Superman in some form or fashion because he's the most powerful being in their universe, right? When honestly, I still maintain it's the Flash. I'm just saying, but by doing what they did with Kal-El, I think it was genius move for this story because he's not even a factor until the third act, and even then, when you finally see him, you're like, oh my god, look what happened because he did land in Metropolis. He didn't land in Smallville. The government's had him since day one and controlled him since day one. I mean, I love this. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, I think the stuff that they do with him and Cyborg is interesting. I really like the idea of Cyborg being the number one hero in the world because he's government sanctioned, as opposed to Superman being the number one in the world because he's an alien. And you know, if the government gets their hands on him first, they wouldn't trust him, so they would keep him locked up. Um, and I think it's just such a great visual of getting this frail Superman that has been out out of the sunlight and locked up for his entire life and doesn't know anything about right or wrong. Has never had a friend. Um, I agree. I think it's genius. I think it's a good way of taking the most powerful character off the board because if he's on the board, then yeah, you can't just do this back and forth between Aquaman and Wonder Woman without him stepping in.
Exactly right. He would have to play a role because Superman would never sit by and let anything like this happen.
Yeah.
So you just remove him from the equation. I think it's brilliant. I loved it.
Yeah, I like
Um,
the idea of what if his ship landed somewhere else. I think that's the cool thing about a story like Red Sun, where the ship landed in Soviet Union. Uh, and I think that's a cool idea because that ship could have always landed somewhere else. So I think that's always been a good place to do what ifs and Elseworld stuff.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I'm a big fan of that. Let me ask you this. What character did they absolutely nail in this versus what character do you think maybe they didn't handle correctly? Do you have one for one answer and one for the other?
I don't know if there's a right answer there because I don't feel like these are supposed to be true portrayals of any of the characters outside of the Flash.
Mm, right.
Um, you can make the case that the Flash does something very selfish, and in the end, Dawn is kind of right about him when he's monologuing. It's like you did something really, really selfish here, and he doesn't really get comeuppance for it. He just kind of goes and fixes it, and then he goes on with his life. Um, it's like a happy ending for him after he kind of ruined the world. Uh, and he gets to keep all of his memories of his mother. It's like, well, wait a minute. You're not going to get punished for any of that?
Wow, you're right, dude. There is no comeuppance for him. Yeah. Interesting. I mean, in that regard, he's not so much like Peter Parker after all. I mean, again, the show is more Peter Parker Spider-Man than this is, but I think there's elements of it here of him not being perfect. But yeah, you're right. There's really no not retribution, but there's no cause and effect. He comes back and everything's fine, and he's the Flash again with the cool suit from Injustice, by the way. That is the Injustice suit.
Well,
I'm
I
just
think it's more
saying.
of the new 52 suit because it's like
Ah,
it
there
has
you
all of
go.
the same piping as new 52. Um, but yeah, it does. It does definitely feel that way by the end of the movie. Like he goes through all of this and he learns a lesson, but he also kind of gets away with what he did. And then, like I said, he gets all of these memories of having a life without his mother that he didn't have before.
Yeah, 100%. And the TV show's similar to that as well because he keeps his memories after he comes back, which is cool for him.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the show maybe encapsulated this better than the book did. Honestly,
yeah, I mean, and I can't say that that's a bad characterization of Barry. I think that for the most part, we do get the idea that Barry is a heroic character throughout this show. I mean, throughout this movie. But at the same time, that's a thing I did bump up against that he did something really selfish and he almost destroyed the entire Earth. And then he was just like, "Oh, whoops, whoops, let me go fix it. My bad." Like almost like he pulled the cord out of the TV or something. Oh, well, let me plug this back in and let me go fix it. And then it's like, all right, well, yeah. Well, now I have all my memories back, and then I got to have this heartfelt moment with Batman where I gave him the letter from his dad, and then Batman's like, "Thank you." And it's like, well, you did a bad thing, actually, though. You gave a thank you.
and you think if anybody would have called him out, it would have been Bruce. It's like, dude, you screwed up. Look what you about did. Yeah, he says you're one heck of a messenger. So yeah,
And don't get me wrong, I do think that was a sweet moment of him getting this
yeah.
letter from his dad. I do think the way that that was done was really good. Um, we don't get to see what's on the letter; we just see um, "Love always, your father, Thomas Wayne." Even the fact that Batman is just so obsessed with his parents that he immediately knew that was his dad's handwriting when he saw the letter. All of that
Mm.
stuff is sweet moments, but it still comes after the fact that he basically almost ruined the world and nothing happened to him.
And then he goes back to fix it, and he's essentially putting his mother back in the grave when he does it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what we're supposed to take away from it is that he had to make the ultimate sacrifice in having a
Hmm.
life without his mother, but at the same time, what he did was still ultimately selfish.
True. Do you have and if the answer is yes, you don't have to tell me what it is. Do you have a flashpoint moment in your life that if you could go back and fix something, would you do it? Would you risk it? If you could.
I think I do, but I'm not sure how much it would change things.
Oh,
I
wow.
think we all have things that we regret. I think we
Yeah.
all look back on things and go, "Man, I wish I would have done that different." Uh, but sometimes I think we just, and I think the thing we're supposed to understand from this movie is that I think we fixate on things that we cannot change, man. And sometimes, even if we do
Very
change
true.
things, it's just not supposed to work out that way. I think things are supposed to work out the way that they work out. Um, so yeah, I have regrets. I think if I really thought about it hard enough, there's stuff that I would want to try and fix. But who's not to say it might make something else that I manage to do later into a disaster. It might ruin something else that I actually love. So who knows?
Excellent point. Yeah, because again, butterfly effect. If there's a Gwyneth Paltrow flick, Revolving Doors, I think it's what it's called. Uh, Pretty good. I don't know if you checked it out. You should. You should. It's worth your time. Where she makes a different decision, and so through the movie, you get to see what life would have been like had she made the other decision, and she becomes two different people in the film, and it's just an interesting journey to see what life could have been like had she chosen one other direction to go. I mean, it's to me, this boils down to conversations that guys like you and I have all the time about weird stuff that maybe normal people, I'll say, won't sit around and talk about time travel. I could spend an entire evening to talk about time travel, and it doesn't get me anywhere. I don't make new friends because of it. I'm not writing a book about it. But to me, it's fascinating to sit around and talk about things like this. I mean, to me, it is. Um, but yeah, this is the idea of would you go back? And dude, everyone uses the JFK analogy, right? Everyone uses that. It's either JFK or Hitler. It's always those two. Well, if you could kill Hitler as a baby, would you? Knowing what he's going to turn into, or could you actually kill an infant? I know that sounds gruesome, but like, and plus, if you could save JFK, if you could warn them, if you could go back with proof and say, look, here's a newspaper, it's authentic. You die in a week. We got to keep you out of Daily Plaza. There's a great book Stephen King wrote called 11/22/63. It's fantastic because I'm a big Kennedy assassination era kind of, you know, uh, I'm fascinated by that, right? But nothing works out. He ruins everything by saving him. Like, I mean, like you said, Phil, some things are meant to happen. I think what we get enamored with is not so much what we think it can turn into. It's the great unknown of would it have worked out differently had I done the other thing, right?
Yeah, I do think that especially with death, I think especially with the kid involved too. And I think that maybe that's part of why the backbone of this story is related to uh Barry and Bruce, because it's the same thing with Bruce. Bruce has fixated his entire life on uh maybe if I had did this different, or maybe if I was this, if I existed in a world where Joe Chill could do something like take my parents away, then maybe some other kid would not have to be me. Um,
Mm.
and so I think that is a great story, but that's a part of grief. I think we all fixate over things that sometimes you just can't fix it. Sometimes you just can't fix it.
Yeah. Um, it's one of the reasons I enjoy this story. Yes, it's a lot of doom and gloom. It is. You're right. He does make a boneheaded decision, but it does kind of show you sort of the duality of the heroes that no matter everything they can do, you know, they can't at the end of the day do anything right for themselves. Like they try, but it's like heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? That you can't have it both ways. You're either going to be of service or you're going to sit back and do for yourself. Like none of these people are meant to have normal lives because of the profession they took up, because of the abilities they have. I mean, and this is across every comic book universe. I think it's the same story. Like you can't have a normal life. It's not going to happen. Um, yeah, that's some deep stuff, man. Really think about it. Um, so what's your final analysis of this book? Like, what is it that is it the time travel aspect that your key takeaway from this? Do you shake your head as you see the story, like, oh, DC's at it again? Like, is this a story worth telling? Does it make? I mean, it makes sense for them with what they do all the time.
Uh,
Um, what's your take on that?
I think it's good. I think it's a very good movie. I think it's an interesting concept for a book. I liked it. I enjoyed it. It does make me want to go back and read some of the comics, because I'm sure that it dives into more of the backstories of why Wonder Woman ended up the way she was, or why Aquaman ended up the way that he did. I like it. Now, does that mean that means this absolutely has to become a feature film? Maybe not.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with the Flash flick. And, this again, I had this line stuck in my head and I couldn't remember where I heard it. Of course, Phil, when we reviewed the first Superman film, Christopher Reeve, we heard the line, all these powers, all these things I can do, all those powers, and I couldn't even save him. And, he's talking about Pa Kent, right? I mean, it's like, again, that's the tortured existence. In terms of this film, because we don't know what's going to happen with it, let's say that it does great numbers, and we think it will because of people are going to be curious to see what it's going to be. Plus, Michael Keaton's back, and we freaking love Michael Keaton. If this thing does great numbers, but the critics hate it, or it flops in week 2, week 1's a huge surge, and week 2 it's dead, and this film makes no money. Essentially, it can't make its money or what it's expected to make. I mean, are we back to the drawing board? Is Warner Brothers back to the drawing board again? What do you think?
It's so funny because I think they're going to end up back at the drawing board regardless. Because I think that because I mean we've already seen it with the Batman franchise. They've already rebooted Batman. I think inevitably they're going to end up rebooting most of these characters. It's just the nature of the beast at this point. I just think if they started off on a better foot, they wouldn't have to reboot as soon. But I think it's inevitably going to happen. They're going to have to recast the characters. They're going to have to do something to change things. But who knows?
Hard to say, man, right? Hard to say. Hard to know till we get there. Buy your tickets ahead of time, kids. Hold on to them for dear life. They may become collector's items if this thing never comes out. I don't know. Well, kids, there you have it. There's Flashpoint. We went off on a lot of different directions, kind of like this movie does with the time traveling thing, right? But we did it for good reasons. I think it's worth your time, folks. If you've not read the book's really good. I can vouch for that. The TV show's excellent. And you can dive into any season. Some seasons are stronger than others, in my opinion. But Grant, it's worth it just to tune in, if nothing else, for Grant Gustin. He's fantastic. He really, truly is. And then, of course, the movie, I think, is pretty top-notch. Phil, let's take this thing home, my friend. Give me your last word on Flashpoint.
Flashpoint is a good animated film. It's a good jumping on point if you're interested in more Justice League stuff and you're not fulfilled by feature films or something else. I think if anything else, like this stuff is great because it makes people want to go and read comics. And I say all the time, like it's great that the movies are doing well. It's great that these characters are more visible, but support the comics because I feel like the comics are the stuff that you're going to get more of what you want out of the comics. You're not going to get some of the limitations of other media.
100%. And I'm with you totally on that. Anything that drives you to the books, anything that drives you to a comic book store is a good thing, kids, because I don't care what anyone says about the medium going digital. And yes, I've been known to read comic books digitally. There's nothing like holding a book in your hand. And if you're a comic book guy like I am, like Phil is, I'll tell you right now, every time I buy a book that's maybe as old as I am or older, the first thing I do when I open it out of the bag is smell the book. It's a habit. I love the smell of the old paper. It's something about it that's just, I love the touch of it, the feel of it, loving reading these things. It's connected to my childhood in a big, bad way. I'm always going to go back to comic books over every other medium. And I love the MCU, folks. You guys know that I'm in the bag for it forever. But I love the books. So I'm with Phil on this. This movie's worth watching. It's definitely worth your time. So what's going to happen with the film? Well, tune in next year when Phil and I review the Flash movie. We may have more than just me and Phil on here. We may have 3 or 4 people to try to make sense of it or to praise it. Who knows? For all we know, this thing's going to be 5-star. But we'll see if and when the time comes. In the meantime, That is Flashpoint. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.